Hello and welcome to this new episode of Expert Insight. So as you probably know, each month we'll have an expert from the Swift community teaching us something new. And today I'm really excited to have Paul on the show. So welcome, Paul.
Hello, really excited to be here.
Great. So can you introduce yourself and tell us what is your day-to-day job, the main task you're doing currently?
Yeah, so I'm Paul. I'm an iOS developer, and I work at the BBC in the UK. So I work I work on the iOS application for a product in the BBC called iPlayer, which is where you can watch all the BBC content on demand and live. And as part of my day-to-day job, I basically do a lot of working on new features, maintaining the code base. We're currently going through like a big modularization project, and we're rewriting the application as well into more modern technologies, because it's an app that's been going on for a very long time. It's one of a very long-lived application in the App Store. So it's got a lot of legacy code. So we're kind of like tidying that up, and it's a lot of our efforts are in that. Aside from that, I put a lot of effort in like CI as well at work. So I try to like maintain CI, do new features, and try to make sure everything works as expected and nothing breaks when it shouldn't. But yeah, that's what I do in my day to day.
Awesome. I saw that you have a really nice blog talking about everything around CI, CD, and so on. Maybe we'll talk about that later, but you really seem to be an expert in that domain. So that's great.
Thank you.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, where are you from? When did you start programming? And do you have any formal education in computer science?
Yes, so I am from Spain. I'm from Barcelona. That's where I was born, and I grew up there. And when I was 18, I moved to the UK to go to university. And I've been basically living since then. So for the past 8-9 years, I've been living in the north of England, first in York and now in Manchester. And yes, so I don't have a formal education in computer science as such, but I did go to uni to do electronic engineering with music tech. So I'm a big music fan. I've played piano since I was a kid and stuff, and it's something I really wanted to do, like go and study something related to music. And I really liked engineering as well, so I did like kind of try to do the best of both worlds. And it wasn't until we didn't do like that much programming at uni. It was on the last year that we did like an iOS module, and that's when I kind of like fell in love with it. I was like, I really want to do this. And then I went on to a junior, very, very junior. I wasn't even a junior, but back then I knew very, very little about iOS.
That's nice.
Here in Manchester, I started doing iOS, and they basically in the company, I had amazing colleagues, an amazing boss who knew a lot, and they basically taught me so much. And then I've been through a few companies and learned through making, I guess, and through building apps, which is really, really enjoy it.
Oh man, that is so inspiring. That means that you didn't start programming when you were, I guess, a little kid, right? Like many in our community. So it was something that you tried once and you fell in love with that. And from that, you start doing your own project and so on, and landing your first job as an iOS engineer. Nice. That's really inspiring. And maybe at the end, you're going to share us maybe some advices for aspiring developers or people coming from other background and that are willing to have a first job as an iOS engineer. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So let's now talk about what you are going to teach us today, right? And what are you going to show us today, Paul?
So I am going to show you how to make a command line application using Swift, and we're going to use the latest like structure concurrency stuff. So we're going to use async await to do a bit of networking. We're going to write to the file system. We're going to be able to like pass parameters in and out, and we're going to be using an library made by Apple called the Swift Argument Parser, which is it's a perfect tool to make like command line applications with Swift. I am a big fan of like the Swift for everything approach. So every time I need to make a tool, I need to do something like that, I reach for like Swift first. So yeah, this is actually the tool that I'm going to show you today, is something that we are currently using in iPlayer at the BBC. It's something I made a couple of weeks ago, a variation of it. So we're collecting metrics on like GitHub actions. I wrote a like blog about it. So I just thought I would explain how we build it using Swift and how it works.
I'm looking forward to see that. So can you
Awesome.
please share your screen and let's begin.
Cool. Hold on. It says it's disabled.
Okay.
Oh, I can now.
You can? Okay, cool. Perfect.
Perfect. I think it's this one. Right. Can you see my screen fine?
Yeah, I can.
Perfect. So yeah, as I said, the whole point of this command line tool that we built at work was to list a number of workflow runs for a given repository. Okay. And what this does is it basically gives you back data of, a bunch of workflows for a given day. I think by default it's the past 5 days. And it gives you things like when it started, when it finished, the name of the workflow. And so that we can see it actually what this looks like. I've gone to the Fastlane repo, which is what we're going to be examining in a way. And you can see here, this will be what the information we will get. So we'll get the workflow runs. So we'll get the name of the workflow, which will be processing issues. We'll get how long it took and when it actually ran. And then we'll be outputting that as JSON first to the command line, and then we're going to put it in a file as well. And what this allows you is to basically over time, you can do metrics and you can say, okay, you can put it in your metric system. You can put it in a JSON file in AWS, for example, which is kind of what we're doing. And we track it over time. So we can see, say, our release pipeline over 2 months go like significantly slower. We can see that in a graph and we can go, okay, this workflow is getting really slow. We should like tackle it and we should, do something about it. I'm not going to go into like the graph visualization and stuff like that. I'm just going to show you how you can kind of grab this data and, how you can make a tool that puts that data in a nice format, in a JSON format.
Perfect. So, but you didn't mention here Fastlane. Can you explain very briefly what it is, please?
So I just took the repository as an example so that we can get the data. We're not going to be using Fastlane, but Fastlane is a frame. Well, it's a tool that allows you to write CI workflows, basically. So you can write things such as communicating with App Store Connect, or you can write your own like scripts for the CI. You can build your application with it, an iOS application. All that sort of stuff you can do with Fastlane. It's what we use at work, and I just wanted to find something that had like actions that had run.
All right.
So I just
right on. Perfect.
Cool. Awesome. So to create, so I've just opened the terminal and I'm on my developer directory. So to create a command line tool, we're going to basically make a Swift package. So I'm going to create a directory called GitHub Action Metrics. And then I'm going to see so I'm going to go into this directory. Let me just copy this. We can go into this, and then we can just run a Swift package in it to create a new Swift package. And the good thing about Swift packages is that you can create it with a type. So this can be a library, which is the more common like Swift package. It's something that you can import into your iOS application and write some library code. But there's an option which is an executable. So we're going to be using this. So if I create this, we're going to see that it creates a bunch of files. So it creates a package.swift, a README file, a git ignore, and then the sources for the application, just a normal Swift package. So if I open this now, if I open the package.swift, it's going to now open my Swift package in Xcode. So by inspecting the package.swift file, we see that it gives it a name and it has two targets. So the first one is the test target, which we're not going to touch in this case. This is where your test for the application live. And then there's an executable target. So the executable target is the one that you can run, that you can execute, basically, that you can run your command line tool from. So if we inspect the sources for that target, we will see that it's decorated with main. And what this means is that it's the entry point of this application. And then it will have a static function called main, which basically, whenever you execute this source, it will go into this function and run any code that's in here. So we can just verify it by printing something. So we can say, hello world, for example, and we can just run the GitHub action metrics. And we can see that it's just run it. It's just run hello world there. So before we go any further, I want to introduce you to Swift Argument Parser. So Swift Argument Parser is a library made by Apple, and it's completely open source. It's a Swift package, and it allows you to basically make commands and command line tools and pass arguments to them very, very easily. So for example, to pass an argument to a command line tool, you just define a property wrapper, define a variable, and that's literally all you need to do. And since we're going to be handling user input and all these and these flags and arguments, we're going to make our lives easier and just use this library.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm going to copy this, the HTTP link.
Yeah, and
I'm going to add.
And nowadays, the thing is Xcode make it really easy to integrate third-party libraries directly with this manifesto file. So
yeah, definitely. So yeah, we just define the package URL, and then we just make it, we're going to make it exact as 1.2.0. So we just want to get the latest version. And I tend to always just use exact just so that it's always pinned to the same version, because sometimes if you define it as from, it will update the, I think, up to the next like minor version. And sometimes I've had some issues in the past. So just to make it very, very reliable, I always like pin it to the exact version.
Okay, that's a nice tip indeed. Okay, nice.
And then what we do is we just get the product. So we just define the dependency. This is going to be Argument Parser. And the package is going to be Swift Argument Parser. The reason why you have to define product is because the name of the product that you're going to be using is different to the one of the package. So if that was called, if that was called Argument Parser, then you could just write a string in the dependencies. But yeah, it's a different name. So Xcode is going to complain.
All right. And my question here is, can you get back to the manifesto file? Okay. How do you know that it is here Argument Parser for the product name?
Cool. Yeah, I can show you. Yeah, we can take a look at the package.swift. So we can see in the package.swift for the library itself, we can see that there is a product library called Argument Parser. So that's where you're grabbing it from. So that's the package name that we've mentioned there. Let me open that quickly side by side. Yes, so that is the package name that we've referenced there. Yep. And then you get the product with a name. So you go into product name, and that's the Argument Parser name.
Awesome.
And yeah, that's where you define your dependency.
All right, thank you.
And this should, no worries, this should hopefully compile. Cool, so it succeeded. So now we can go into our source file. And now instead of just defining this, we're going to remove all the code in here. And we're going to start using Argument Parser. So we're going to import it just as you do with any other dependencies and package. and packages, and then now it's complaining because it needs to have some form of entry point function that it can run code from when you decorate it with main. But Argument Parser has this parsable command protocol, which kind of handles this for you. And then we can do, don't think we need to declare as public. And then we can just do, we can implement this protocol. Sorry, we're going to be using the async variation of this, which allows us to use async await. And then we just need to conform to this protocol by implementing the run method. So what the run method does is every time this command line tool, this command gets executed, it will go into the run method and it will run all the code that you define in here. So that's all that we're going to be using, and that's it. So hopefully we can build again, and this time it has failed, and that's because of the tests. So we're for now going to remove them because we're not going to go into testing this time. Cool. Awesome. So the build succeeds, and now we can start writing our command line tool. So we've got everything set up now to write the command line tool. So we can go back into the API and we can have a look at what endpoint we need to run.
Okay.
So I believe, let me see if I can get the link to the URL. Cool. So it's from this from the GitHub API. Okay. We want to define a URL, and we just define it like this from string. So this is the base path of the GitHub API. So it's api.github.com. And then we just want to get this path, and we will need to fill some gaps there. Okay. So we can paste that there. So we want to call this endpoint to get all the action runs for a given repository. Okay. Now we need to know, we need to import Foundation as well, because that URL is part of Foundation. Now we need to know what the owner and repository is. So in this case, it's going to be Fastlane. Okay. But we would like to pass that from the command line. So we make it super reusable. Yeah. So the user can go, okay, run this tool, but run it for this repository. We don't want to hard code it here.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can pass an argument. So to do this, we just define it with a property wrapper that Argument Parser gives you, and then we can pass in a help. We'll see how that works in a minute, but this help is what, in case the user doesn't pass this argument, or they run help to know how the command line works, this string will be printed. So we can say, okay, this will be the, let's see, I had some notes of what to, cool. So yeah, we can say that this will be the repository data should be parsed from, the repository from which data should be parsed from. Okay. In user repo format, because we want to say this should be, we're going to replace it with this. So we're going to say Fastlane. So it's going to be the user or organization and the repository. And then we've got a property wrapper. So we need a property, right? So we're going to say, let's call it repository, and we're going to call it string. Okay. And then we can just replace this Fastlane with the repository. Okay. And that should build, right? So let's now run the command line tool and see what happens. So we're going to print it and see if that does anything. Okay. We're going to run it, and we are getting something. So this is already generated for you when you use Argument Parser. So as you can see, it's failing because it's missing the expected argument repository. And as you can see, the help string we've provided, it's here. So it's saying the repository which data should be parsed from in user repo format. So it's already giving us all of this just from this property wrapper, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, quite powerful.
Yep, absolutely. And then, so how do we pass this? How do we still use Xcode, debug, and still pass arguments to our command line tool? So we can go into edit scheme, and in run, we've got this arguments option. So what we can do is pass it a parameter. So this can be fastlane. And every time you do Command R or you run the application, I'm going to run it from here. So what I'm doing is just pressing Command R, but you can also run it from here. Every time this runs now, it's going to get passed an argument called fastlane with that fastlane value. So now when we run it, it is still missing something.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at it. Argument is passed on launch. If I run it again, metrics repository.
And what about the name of the argument? Maybe.
I don't think it should. I don't think it should need it. So if I just rerun it, it still doesn't work. What about if I said, I'm gonna try and set a minimum. I don't think that should make any difference though, but
let's see.
Oh, it does.
Oh. All right.
I think the minimum I had to set it for something else was 1015. So
okay.
Anyway, that seemed to work.
It's working. That's the most important thing. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna go through that. So yeah, basically you pass it an argument through argument passed on launch on the run part of the scheme, and yeah, that should pass it through. So now we can see that it's passing fastlane to the command line tool, and it's printing it. It's printing the URL.
Awesome.
So cool. So we know that's gonna be there. So yeah, we've just got that URL. So now we need to do something with it. So we can just fetch it. For now, we're gonna force and wrap it here. So we're just gonna fetch it with URL session. So we're just gonna do a request. So we're gonna say URL session dot shared dot data. So we're gonna use, as you can see here, we're gonna use the asynchronous API because we can, and we don't have to deal with completion handlers. We're gonna pass it a URL request and just pass it the URL we've just created. And this needs to be marked with a try because it can throw, and it's also asynchronous, so we can mark it with a wait. So we're gonna know that it's gonna hand it off, it's gonna post the execution, and it's gonna, when it's ready, it's gonna run this in an asynchronous context. And whatever we define after this will have data available because we've got an await. And that's the beauty of async await and structured concurrency, that we just get asynchronous behavior for free in like a very synchronous kind of way.
Exactly.
Cool. So we've got this data now. So we're gonna decode it. So let's have a look at what the structure looks like. There is a lot of fields in this response. But what we're interested in is the name. We're interested in the created at, which is when the workflow started. And we want to measure the duration of the workflow. So we're interested in this updated at. Updated at, funnily enough, is just when it ends. It's got a weird name, but it's when the workflow ends. So we're going to do some like logic there to know how long it's lasted from these two dates.
Okay.
Exactly. And I think we're going to want the ID as well. So I have done some work and I created a couple of, we're going to use JSON decoders to do this. So we're going to, I made a little snippet, which is basically for the API, two decodable types. One of them holds an array to the workflows, and the workflow struct has all the data that we want. Conclusion is just so that it's a string that tells us whether the workflow has failed or succeeded. And yeah, we can filter out to only have like successful workflows or failed workflows, whatever we need. And yeah, that should be enough to decode for now. So we can say that our decoded response will be equal to the JSON decoder. We're going to make a JSON decoder and just decode it So we're just going to say workflows response. We're going to give it a type, and the data we already have from the line above. It's just the response that came from URL session. And now we can run it, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if that gets decoded correctly. So we get an error, which is a key not found. And that is because because it's Swift, we use camel case to define all our properties, but the GitHub API is using snake case. So we need some way. Yeah, we need a custom decoder logic to convert from the both of them.
Yeah.
So I've got a small snake case decoder extension.
Perfect.
You'll also realize that I'm decoding straight into dates, and I need to give it a specific date decoding strategy to match whatever GitHub is using, because otherwise the decoding will fail.
Again. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And what it's doing is just converting from snake case into my values. So if I just change to using this decoder, and then I just do a dump of the decoder response so we can see what it outputs, and we run it again. We can see some values. So
nice.
we can see the processing issues workflow, which started at 10:46 this morning. So if we go to Fastlane, we can see it's the processing issues from 6 hours ago, which it was about 10:40 odd in the morning. Awesome. So we're getting data from an API.
That's nice.
Now what we can do is we can make it so we kind of want to do something with this data and then print it in a format that we're happy with.
Okay.
So let's define what we want to output. So what I wanted to do was, I've got some encodable types here. We'll see why in a second. But what I wanted to get out was a bunch of data points, and they'll have a name, which is the name of the workflow that the data point is for. They've got a duration, which is how long the workflow took, and then a date, which is when the workflow actually ran. So when did it start, how long it took, and what the name of the workflow was. In iPlayer, what we do is we grab all this information, we put it in Amazon, in AWS, and then we plot a nice graph, and then we can filter by workflow, and we can see how long it takes over time.
That's pretty awesome.
I'm going to show you how what the JSON data that we output from the command line looks like. So now what we have to do is to get the workflow runs that we had before. So this property here, we need to get this data, do some logic, and get it outputted in this format in the workflow data point, which is what our service wanted and what we wanted to print to the command line as well, what was useful for us. So to do this, we can define a property called data points, and from the response we get the workflow runs, and then we just do a map in this case, so that we convert it into a new type, and then we say run in, and we can just return a workflow data point, and we're going to have to do our logic here. So the name is just going to stay exactly the same. So let's just call run.name. The duration is going to be the updated at, which is the time that it ends. And then we're just going to say the time interval since, and we want to call it the started at. So we want to say we want the time interval since you started. So basically from when it ends to from when it starts to when it ends, basically it's just the duration. And this returns a time interval, which will be already in seconds. So that kind of fits what we need, because we wanted this duration to be in seconds. So that's perfect for us.
Okay. And it's great to mention that time interval is like a type alias for double. I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Perfect.
It is. Yeah. So yeah, it's just a double, but it makes it a bit more verbose, I guess, to use time interval for seconds, I guess. And I think it's kind of what we wanted to output in the end. We just wanted to, you know, to make sure that it was in seconds and not knowing if it was milliseconds and stuff. So yeah, I think it is just a timing type alias. Yeah, it is.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. And then last but not least, the date. This will just be from the run whenever it started, basically. We just want to say, you know, log it to the starting time. So let's get rid of this print statement. And now what do we do with this data? So the way we wanted to do this is we wanted to get it back into snake case, just to make it more in like a JSON format for our server. We just wanted to, for our analytics kind of service, we just wanted to convert it back to snake case. And we just wanted to set, again, the decoding strategy to make sure it was back into, ISO 8601, just to make it as similar to the GitHub data as we possibly could with our kind of like variations. So I defined another encoder that took it back to snake case. ISO, it's got a data encoding strategy again, but this time it's got an output formatting property, which is pretty printed. So we wanted to do this, and we'll see why in a second, so that it looked nice when you print it to the terminal and when we write it to a file. So we wanted to make it look nice, and this is what I love about like JSON decoder and encoder. You get so much for free with like just enum cases. So yeah, we can just use this and encode it into data, right? So we just do encoder, we use the snake case encoder we've just created, and then we just encode these data points, and that will just be, I think we need to try it. Cool. Encoded data, encoded data points. Yeah, I think that. Cool. So we've got that. And then now what we want to do is print it to the user. So we can say if let's just say we want to call it pretty printed string, and we make a string from data. We can make from that encoded data, we can make it into, I think the encoded will be UTF-8 as it's JSON, and then we just print the pretty printed string. So now what we've done is we've gotten it back into a format that we wanted it in. So we wanted it back in snake case, and we wanted it pretty printed so that it looked nice. And we're just printing that string to the terminal. So whenever the user runs this, they're gonna see a nice like JSON object that will make sense to them. So you see here the date is back in ISO 861 format. We've got the actual duration, which we can now compare against this. It's 40 seconds, and we've got it there as 40 seconds. And we've got the date as well of when we wanted, when this workflow ran.
That's nice.
So you can see there locking issues and pull requests as well. So you could expand all this data set to whatever you wanted. And yeah, you could change it to whatever you needed. So one more thing I wanted to do.
I think the beauty of Swift is that from this output, you can manipulate it the way you want, like doing some custom, not custom decoding, but for the date, you can definitely pass it to have something more readable, human readable. And that is one of the beauty of Swift, I guess, which is nice.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, completely agree. Cool. So one more thing I wanted to do was to introduce another kind of parameter that we can pass to a command line tool using Argument Parser, and it's a thing called an option. So an option will always have a name. So it's what you pass in the terminal as like this, basically. So you would pass it like this. For example, if you wanted an output parameter, you would have like something like this. And we can also make it optional. So if the user chooses not to give an output parameter, then we can just print it to the terminal. And this parameter will be the output file, the path to the output file to write the output to. So we can just make it, then we need a variable called output. And the way you define whether it's required or not is very cool because you just mark it optional.
Oh, wow.
So if you mark it optional,
Nice.
you don't need to pass it in. If you don't mark it optional, you need to pass it in, which I think is, yeah, it's pretty cool. You don't have to do any logic.
Definitely. The argument parser library is going to handle all that for you. That is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, literally everything. So you just define the option, and you don't even, you could provide it with a name, with a different name, but if you don't, then you pass the parameter as the variable name. So you pass it as this.
Output. Nice.
Yeah. So now what we can do is, if this output parameter is found, so we can say if let output, let's just say else here. So if we have an output parameter, if the user has passed in a path to an output file that we want to write this to, we need to create a file. So to do this, we are just going to write it in the current, somewhere in the current directory. So we're just going to do current working directory. I am going to make my life a bit easier. I think I'm going to make it v13. I'm going to make it Ventura so I can make use of the new APIs. So I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
The new URL document APIs. So I can do it just current directory. And then we are just going to make an output file path. So we're just going to say output file path. And this is going to be a URL with a file path. The file path is just going to be the output parameter that they've passed in. So I could call it output.json, for example. And here we're just going to make it relative to the current directory.
Okay.
So in the current directory, we're going to create a file with this path. So the only thing we have left to do is create that file. So we can do that from data directly. So we write it to the output file path.
Okay. All right.
And I think this is, yeah, so it is throwing. So we need to try it. And that's all we need to do to write a file, I think. So again, we're going back into the scheme here, and we're going to make a new parameter. So we need to pass it --output and then the output name. So that'll be output.json.
Okay.
The order does matter, I think. I think arguments need to come first, and then any other options.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, --output, and yeah, all Swift, well, Xcode will separate all of this by a space. So if the resulting command will be something like this, the executable, the repo, and then it will be something like this, output.json. So that's what it will basically run. So if we run this now, we should see a JSON file. We expect to see a JSON file. We don't see anything, but we can maybe put a print statement. So we just say written file to, and we make it output file path, output file path to absolute string. So let's see where it's printing, where it's putting that file.
Yeah.
Right. So by default, Xcode runs these executables and these applications from derived data, which might make it a bit painful to debug. But you can get around it by, I believe there's options here. So you can use a custom working directory.
Okay.
And you can make it so that it's in your directory. So if we see here GitHub Action Metrics, I can choose this, my repo, my project, as the working directory. And now next time I run it, you should see it appearing on the left-hand side. There we go. So it's written a file and it's got all the data in it. And now we can see that the path is my directory. So it's got GitHub Action Metrics, output.json.
That sounds
yeah. Nice. That's the command line. And one last thing I wanted to talk about was how to do it. So now that you've got it working, you're likely to not run it from Xcode. So you're likely to run it from from the command line. So there's two ways you can do this. So you can do a Swift run, and you can, I think you can just get the name of your file, sorry, of your target, which is going to be GitHub Action Metrics. And then I think you can just pass it parameters like this. So you can run it from the command line exactly like this. So with Swift run, the name of your target, which is this one here, the executable target, this needs to match this name. And then you do this, I think this is just an operator so that you can pass extra parameters. So we can do the same thing and pass in an output of test.json as well. And that it didn't like it. Oh, I think it might not like it because of this dash, but we can, yeah, the other thing I wanted to show is that you can build it as well and get an executable out. And you could potentially distribute this executable and not have to run Swift run. So you could just host it somewhere or distribute it to your teammates and they can like put it on the CI machine. And to do this, you need to define a product. So what this will tell Xcode is that when you build, you need to output a product, like you need to give me something out. So this will be an executable, and we can name it in the exact same way. And then we can use a target, which will be the GitHub Action Metrics. And then when I run, when I do Swift build on this, we will see that if I open this directory in Finder, and I go to the build.build folder, in the debug configuration, we are going to have an executable here, which is the GitHub. And you can just literally run it. So you can go to debug, and then you can just run GitHub Action Metrics, pass it fastlane, and -- output test.json. And it should run the executable. So it's written a file to that, and we can just read that file, and it doesn't exist. Oh, sorry, because I shouldn't put I don't think I need to put this. This file. Yeah, there we go. So we've got it there. So you can run it, distribute it, and you've got an executable out that you can run in any Unix system, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. That's pretty cool. And I do have some question regarding that.
Of course.
First, can you go back to the main file, please?
Absolutely. 2 seconds. Yeah.
All right. So here I see that you directly put the repository, right? Directly in Xcode. So is it a way to ask it for that repository directly with what you use, the Swift argument parser?
Yeah. So this one here.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. This one.
Yeah. So this is getting passed in through an argument. So it's coming from so Swift Argument Parser is helping us let the user know that they need to pass in a repository. Another thing that you could potentially do is I think there's readline. So what readline does is you can basically read the user's input. So you could say, okay, I'm going to run. You don't have to give me any arguments, but you need to input something so that I know which repository to go to. So yeah, you can do that with Swift. It's not. I don't think it's Argument Parser. I think it's
just
built into
I think it's foundation. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I think it is. Not sure if there's a way of doing it with Argument Parser. There might be, but I don't think there is. But yeah, it's built in and it works. It works pretty well.
Okay. That's great because I think it will be cool to just ask for the user input. The user types in the repo he wants to get these metrics, and boom, your script is going to fetch that and parse it and save it into a directory. That is
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here you are using Swift in a less trivial way. I guess that many developers that currently use Swift is for doing something like iOS development or maybe Mac OS development. But here you are using it to build a command line interface, right? Command line tool. So
Yeah.
what is for you? What is the most common things like to build with this kind of app with Swift? Like here it is to show a metrics and so on, but do you find any other use cases where building a command line tool like this one is most appropriate?
Yeah, so I've been working on so I think for me it's mainly like scripts and stuff like that. I tend to write it with Swift. Sometimes it's not like as involved as this. So sometimes it's just like an executable file with like a Swift like shebang or something. So for example, something I did a while back, because at work we needed to add like the the ticket number for the task that we're working on in the commit. So I wrote like a Git hook so that I never would forget. So my first instinct was like, well, this is an executable file. I can write this with Swift, right? So I just went and wrote a Git hook with Swift. So for me, it's like I love how easy it is to do things like this, like small things. Like I don't know, I want to make something that scans my directory and shows like unused. I don't know. I can't really think of anything, but shows a bunch of files or recursively goes through my directories and does something. I will probably try and do it with Swift. And most of this is because I am very familiar with Swift and I really like it. It's not because it's, you know, a lot better than other alternatives, or it might take me longer, but I think I'm just very familiar with Swift and I really like it. And it helps me like do things in a way that I'm used to. And I like the type safety and that you get the compiler so it doesn't like randomly crash for some edge case because you've passed an integer and it was expecting a string. You kind of get that safety. But yeah, I think for things like that, for tooling, Swift is pretty incredible. Like I think what you can do is very, very, very good.
Yeah, and I think that you proved that with this command line, and I currently have many ideas into maybe building, recording a video series going through that. So
Nice.
stay tuned. You might find that in this channel. I
Mm-hmm.
personally didn't have time to explore a command line interface with Swift, but this is definitely something I will dive into. So because I see that you can have many possibility here, and when you are familiar with Swift, I think that the sky is the limit. You can build pretty awesome things with those CLIs. All right, awesome. So I think that you can just stop the sharing, and we'll wrap with a few more questions. Okay. So can you give us one piece of advice to beginners or intermediate developers willing to become senior?
Yeah, of course. So the main piece of advice for me, and I think it's something that's really like massively helped me over the past like 2 years, is to share things. Like it doesn't have to be on a big audience, or it doesn't have to be like you don't have to like write a blog or like start making like a big going and speaking in conferences and stuff, but even to your like friends or to your colleagues, just demoing things or just sharing, no matter on what stage of your career you're at. Like I think I saw a tweet today, I can't remember exactly the quotes, but it was Paul Hudson on the conference that's going on in Singapore at the moment. He was saying everyone has something to teach and everyone has something to share. And I completely agree. No matter what stage you're in, like you'll know something that I don't, and you'll know yeah, you'll be able to teach me something, and I'll be able to learn something from you. And I feel that sharing and that like kind of sharing knowledge across like the community just kind of helps speed up the process of learning, which can sometimes be a bit frustrating, but it's not as frustrating if you do it with other people. So if you, for example, at work, we've got like 10% days. So where it's like every couple of Fridays, we're allowed to kind of work on, you know, side projects or do, you know, look into something or go and read a book on like programming or whatever. And at the end of the day, you've got like demos, you've got the 10% demos where everyone shares what they've done and if they've looked into something cool. And the amount of times that I've gone like, oh, wow, that's impressive. Or like, you know, oh, I've never heard of that. Like, I'm going to look into it. It's just amazing, like to hear what people are doing and stuff like that. And I feel like for me, it's, yeah, interacting, sharing, like demoing things, talking about things is a great way to learn. It works for me, like personally from experience. I feel like if I can share something and if I can talk about something or write about something, then it probably means I understood it. So it kind of like really helps to kind of share that knowledge and yeah, talk to people about things, because they might have better approaches that you hadn't considered, or they might just, you know, want to help you build something, or it's just, yeah, very valuable. And don't be put off if you're like, yeah, if you're watching this and you're very early in your career and you're, you know, you've got that like lack of confidence to share things and stuff like that. I have been there. I think we've all been there. And share regardless. Like everyone has something to share at any stage of their career. So I would, yeah, definitely recommend that.
I'm so agree with what you are saying right now, and I think this is one of the main goal of this channel, right? To share everything I learned in iOS development, doing that for about 9 years now. And we'll get to some now rapid fire questions. So do you prefer Git from the command line or from an interface, from a GUI?
Both, I would say. Depends on the change. If I have to pick one, GUI.
GUI. And what client do you use for that?
Fork. Yeah, it's a client called Fork. I think it's the best one I've tried so far. I've tried Tower as well, but I ended up finding some missing features that Fork had, so I just went back to Fork. Really like it. Well, I was gonna say it's free, but it's free, but it encourages you to pay if you use it a lot.
Okay.
So you could go without paying. Yeah, but if you use it a lot, yeah.
Okay, and do you prefer a laptop or a desktop?
Laptop, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, great.
Always.
Laptop with monitor, I guess.
Yeah, laptop with monitor. I spent a fortune in a studio display, so yeah, I've got a very expensive that broke my bank.
Very nice one. Yeah, but very nice
good.
one.
Very good.
Yeah, very good.
Very good.
Great. And do you prefer a standing or a sitting desk?
Standing desk. Even though I don't stand a lot, but when I need to stand, I find it very useful. It helps me like have breaks of like when I feel like very tired and I can't focus on something, I stand up and it helps me massively. So standing desk, definitely.
Okay. And from Twitter, I saw that you are going to attend as a speaker 2 upcoming conferences, one in New York and the other one in Poland, where we'll meet definitely. So can you tell us a little bit about those conferences and what you are going to talk about at those conferences?
Yep. Yeah, very excited to meet you in person. That'll be very nice.
Yeah, definitely.
In New York, I'm going to be speaking about Xcode Cloud. So just a bit about CI. I've been doing like a lot of investigation on my own and trying to figure out how things work. So it's going to be about how to use Xcode Cloud from scratch to using it in a real kind of wall project. And how to run, migrate your Fastlane scripts, how to run them from Xcode Cloud, stuff like that. So That's going to be
Nice.
the New York one. And then the Poland one, it's going to be one that I gave last year in Amsterdam. So it's going to be, yeah, so very related to what we did today. So exploring like the power of Swift like everywhere. So how I kind of approach tasks, like, so I'm going to take like a small library that I made in Swift, and I'm going to show you how you can build like an AWS Lambda around it. You can make like a command line tool like we did today. So how you can build like a bunch of things with just using Swift. So yeah, just kind of like exploring the ecosystem and how the community, you know, how much you can do with Swift these days, and why it might be a good idea to use Swift instead of other tools. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. So speaking about it is, yeah, for me, like super fun.
Yeah, that will be yeah, so good to attend, I guess, and yeah, we'll meet there definitely. So I'm going to talk at that conference as well. Okay, yeah, yes. So I was saying that I'm pretty excited for those conferences, for those upcoming conferences, and we'll have the occasion to meet. And I'm looking forward to that topic, to know more about everything you'll be talking about. So yeah, that will be really great to attend. And do you mind sharing where people can contact you online?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Twitter and LinkedIn at the moment. So LinkedIn is just Pol Piella. You can find me through my name. Twitter is Pol Piella Dev. So that's where I'm most active. I'm on Mastodon as well, on the iOS dev.space instance, even though I don't think I've figured out exactly how Mastodon works yet. But
yeah.
Yeah, I cross-post from Twitter there. So if you're on Mastodon and not on Twitter, like you'll find all the content on Mastodon anyway.
Nice.
And other than that, I blog every week on polpiella.dev, and I've got a newsletter called the iOS CI newsletter. So it goes out every couple of weeks. It's an email every couple of weeks about community related kind of CI/CD news. And yeah, you can subscribe through my website as well, through polpiella.dev. There's a section for the newsletter. So yeah, if you're interested in that, want to learn more about CI and stuff like that, just, yeah, make sure you check it out.
Definitely. I'm going to add all those links in the description of that video, and you can you will be able to see it in the video as well. And yeah, your website is really awesome, really great. So I encourage people to go read your blog posts, your articles, really insightful. And do you have anything else to add, Paul?
I just wanted to say thank you. Yeah, I really like, I've watched the videos on your channel and stuff. I really like the work you're doing, and for me, it's like, yeah, it's an honor to be here. Really, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person in Poland. It'll be very good.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine, Paul. Like being in contact with you from Twitter, I just asked the question once, and you didn't hesitate to jump in. So I really thank you for that. And yeah, it was a really great episode, and we'll talk very soon. Bye.
Cool. Right. See you soon. Bye bye.